People are taking action. People are, looking at the things around them, and they're not settling with the status quo. They're looking for the opportunities to make a difference and do change and get greater numbers of people to be problem solvers and bring them on the bandwagon. And we have just such people here with us today as well, another group of people, Brad Jones. He's the Director of Productivity Improvement and Innovation and a 6-time Shingo winning Tobyhanna Army Depot. And with Brad is Jeff O'Neill, who's the supervisor up there at the depot. Got corrected on that. Now I got the right speak. But you guys have been on this journey for 6 years.
Several years now, Carl, but still a long ways to go.
So what was the burning platform that even made you, how did you even figure it out that you needed some kind of operational excellence, some kind of improvement?
I'd have to say credit goes to a former general officer, General Paul Kearns, who is the commanding officer for the Army Materiel Command several years ago. He was the first one to introduce lean into the Army's industrial base. Our burning platform for our organization, I think Jeff would agree with me, has always been what can we do to get products, weapon systems back to the warfighter faster, at a lower cost so that perhaps they can get more weapon systems for their dollar and for the best quality. Our organizational culture at Tobyhanna is a very patriotic one, a lot of veterans, and people can relate to our efforts, our collective efforts to get products back to the warfighter as quick as we possibly can. Now, of course, the defense budget drawdowns is an even greater impetus for change and improvement, but originally support of the warfighter, especially in the times of the surge in Southwest Asia.
Yeah, and kudos to Paul for seeing that there was an alternative, because you guys were doing your jobs here stateside to support men and women, and we had a discussion at lunch that some of these upgrades and equipment that you work on, sometimes the parts were out of source, that you couldn't that these companies were either rolled up, bought up, or just out of business, and now you have repairs or refurbishments that if you didn't have a methodology and some way of thinking, you'd really be dead in the water.
Yeah, the military is a wide mix of super high-tech, state-of-the-art weapon systems, right, and a lot of legacy systems. And I would assume those legacy systems are going to be in the inventory for quite some time. And as a result, we often find ourselves going back for parts, replacement parts, to OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, who are no longer in business or who have moved on to a newer version of that particular weapon system. When that happens, we have to be innovative in finding ways of getting those parts. Luckily, we have a pretty extensive light manufacturing capability of our own at Tobyhanna, so sometimes we're able to fix that for ourselves. But it's definitely a challenge for all of us in the defense industrial base. At Tobyhanna, it may be more of a challenge because we're the DoD's repair center, remanufacturing center for an acronym here, C4ISR weapon systems. So that's command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance.
Wow.
A very wide product mix, Carl. Things ranging from a handheld radio to, as in Jeff's case, a massive transmitting radar system used to train aircraft pilots. Probably if you had to pick a signature system for type of system for what we do at Tobyhanna, it would be radar. But even there, it's a wide variety of
so low
systems.
volume, high. You'd be
Absolutely.
In the manufacturing world. You'd be the low volume, high mix guys.
High mix. One of my bosses, likes to characterize us as the world's largest job shop, and that's pretty much right on.
So 6 years ago, we're going back to 2006, 2005. Jeff, were you at the facility when it was Colonel Paul? Was it?
It was General Paul Kearns.
General Paul Kearns. Were you around the facility when?
Yes.
He came up with the. How did he even broach it? Because this goes into leadership, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. So Paul is a command and control. Probably if he's a general, he's been in the armed services for a long time. Now he's got to take command and control. Now he's got to say, we're going to use the right brain a little bit more than the left brain of structure and all this. How did he approach you guys with this?
He was familiar with it from his work with the University of Michigan, I believe, and his overall engineering interest in manufacturing. He was a very accomplished guy. And he was commander over all of the Army's industrial base at that time. So he knew that he had heavy and light industrial operations within that organization, and he learned about the lean tools, I believe, from the University of Michigan, and saw that they would be a good fit for the missions that we perform at Tobyhanna and the other Army depots. And it was a challenge in the beginning. I can remember when our first lean office was stood up. I was not the director at that time. Bob Katulka was. But it was definitely a challenge to bring in something new and in some ways to be perceived as trying to tell people to do things differently, even though they were the experts at what they had done. But got through those initial growing stages, and today I'd say it's a pretty well-rooted transformation of the culture that's underway.
And that's part of your job and Jeff's job, is to sustain that and really kind of perpetuate it, because as you go along this journey is when you get better and better and better. And sometimes when you get better, you see so many things that you wonder where you're going to start again. Now there's so many things opened up. So how do you guys even get that going?
Well, one thing we've done is in our strategic plan this year, we adopted as an overarching goal to win a Shingo prize at the total enterprise level.
Okay.
To look at everything we do from cradle to grave. That's a major, mega undertaking. But in order to pursue that, we've agreed to look at the macro level processes that are common to the vast majority of our weapon systems. We're calling it our enterprise approach. Mm-hmm. And that's how we're able to provide a strategic vision for what we're doing. And for example, that's how we've been able to take some of the best practices from individual value streams, like Jeff's mini-mutes, that's an acronym for multiple threat emitter systems, and apply it to the rest of the depot. And I'll let Jeff talk about that particular initiative.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Sure.
Jeff.
We one of the improvements that we made during one of our events was what we call a palletization effort, and basically what it is particular components that we overhaul, we send them out through some of our support shops, and we standardize a process, and we send like processes or like components out to be processed through those support shops. It went over really well, and it's helped us out a lot, and that's something that was identified as a best practice, and currently some of the other directorates and divisions are looking at taking that and using that same practice depot wide.
Yeah, because I see you guys as excuse me, a restoration shop. So if you watch OCC or any of these car shows on Speed Channels, they rip everything apart, and they're piles of stuff.
Right.
Now everybody's got to figure out which value stream do these piles of stuff. Do you keep it as one big pile, or do we start breaking it up into smaller piles, and then how does it get back to that one big pile so we can put it back together and not have leftover pieces or be short pieces?
Yeah, and as we discussed at lunch with you and your folks, that's definitely been a challenge for us. This initiative has moved us a big step in the right direction. We've also worked some other related initiatives to tie in and validate the parts counts on those pallets as they move through the different operations. And that may seem simple, but you and I and Jeff know those are big challenges when you have a job shop that funnels all of its products through key what we call support back shop operations. When you've got 5,000 employees and the volume that goes with that, finding a simple way so that everybody knows what their piece of it is and what goes where can be a challenge. But
Right.
we're making progress.
And you guys know, Jeff, especially the simpler, the better. Because that the whole lean thing is that you guys at the Tobyhanna facility, the depot, probably was at the beginning a very complex place because you're dealing with such complex pieces with such stringent timelines that everybody thought the best way to handle things like that is put complexity and put check marks and put restrictions on everything. And people get confused when that happens. And they don't know when the right handoff is, what's going on. And basically with Lean and TPS is that you're really ripping that down and saying, how simple can we make this so everybody wants to do it all the time, right?
Exactly.
So with the leadership stuff, Jeff, you have 5,000 people. I knew you were a lot of people, but 5,000 is a lot of people.
Around 5,000 employees.
It's a lot of people.
And naturally, a lot of that attributed to the support of the surge in Southwest Asia over the past several years. But you're right, a lot of people, a lot of product, a lot of complexity. You mentioned the leadership. It's essential at all levels of the organization. If Jeff here wasn't respected by his employees as a straight shooter who gives them honest and accurate information and feedback, I don't think our change efforts would take. At the highest level of the organization, we're fortunate in that our commanding officer, a guy named Colonel Chuck Gibson, a full colonel, to show his support, he has served full-time on 2 different value stream events. So that's 4 days of full-time commitment by the commanding officer of the place just to learn more about the operations, to learn more about Lean, and most importantly, I think, to show employees that our senior leader buys into this stuff and supports it and sees its value to other warfighters. So should we.
So Tobyhanna now, are you guys enlisted guys? Are you private citizens? Or what's the mix of the 5,000 people? Because you have a colonel.
Right.
We don't have a colonel here. They just have me. We're with the helmet. So what is the mix for our listeners out there that really want to figure that out?
It's almost totally civilians.
Okay.
The military allocations are the commanding officer, of course, full-time colonel, a sergeant major, a chaplain, chaplain's assistant, and that's pretty much it. The remainder of those 5,000 employees are civilian employees, mostly government civil service employees,
Okay.
but a few hundred contract workers who work side by side with us in the overhaul operations.
So it's really great to see that you have government civil service type people that traditionally weren't really empowered to kind of look at process improvement, because the better job you guys do, the more work you really have. Because it is a budget, so do we just book 1 or 2 things we're going to do, or do we show that we're going to save money and that buying you may not be the strategy for DOD, that we can refurbish, keep machines going, and help out that way? So it's a double-edged sword for you guys.
Well, within the federal government, all the depots operate under what's called a working capital fund.
Okay.
And that's not what most people think about when they think of federal government entities. The way we're set up, there really is no money appropriated by Congress for the operation of Tobyhanna Army Depot. Instead, money is appropriated to program managers, program executive officers, etc., who are responsible for maintaining the weapon systems under their control in a certain state of readiness. So they can come to us, they can come to some other government facilities, they can go to the private sector to have this work performed. So it's a very competitive environment. We provide a firm fixed price to those customers. If we overrun that price, we eat the loss. We don't pass that back to the customer. It really is the closest model in the federal government to a private sector arrangement. All our costs are built into our rates, including our overhead expenses. And if we build in too many expenses, we're no longer competitive, our workload drops, and a very bad spiral can begin. We've been fortunate to have been able to secure workload, win workload in competitions, and through other means, base closure for one, and maintain some very competitive cost structures so that we can compete successfully for stuff.
That's huge. I applaud you guys, because if you're listening to Robert Reed, he had a statement there, we're doers and we have to put up. There's not a lot of talk here. So you guys are putting your promise to your customer that this is what it is. And you understand the competitive environment. So now with understanding that, the challenge is how do you get everybody, 5,000 people is a lot of people, to say, guys, you know what? There are people that can eat our lunch out there. How are we going to sustain? We're in control of our future. What kind of things help you guys on a daily basis? Just to remind everybody of that we're in this together, and more, whether you're a big company, the depot, private industry, a municipality, a township, we're in it together. So don't bellyache and moan. How do you do that?
I'll just talk at the macro level, and then I'll ask Jeff to talk to how he does it at the level where
Please.
the rubber meets the road.
Yep.
Okay. At the macro level, we've used the competitions for shingle recognition as a way to promote buy-in. It's a positive approach. There's a reward at the end of the rainbow. There's a healthy competition within the organization. Geez, Carl's organization won a shingle medallion. Why can't we? Well, we're as smart as they are. We work as hard as they do. Why can't we? That's been a unifying force for us, especially because our employees recognize that you don't win a shingle medallion just for the inputs. No. You've got to be able to show that you've reduced the price to the customer, you've turned your cycle times around, and you've maintained or built on your quality. So there's meaningful, tangible benefits to that warfighter that we talked about originally. That's probably been our most powerful approach to getting employees to buy into this new stuff, as well as the promise that participating in lean and coming up with good ideas will never result in you losing your job. We won't break that promise to people, and we haven't broken that promise to our people over the last several years of lean deployment. And Jeff, maybe you want to talk about how you deal with that right on the shop floor.
Sure. I think reminding the employees and showing them how what they do every day ties into the business to ensure that they understand that, and how overrunning a job can impact future workload. But I have a great group of employees who have accepted the challenges and made some significant improvements in our particular area, and I believe now they see how it's paying off, because we're currently doing an upgrade now that we weren't doing in the past. So that's additional work that we brought into our particular cost center. So I think they can see that the savings that we've made in the past has given us additional work.
Yeah, and Jeff, on the floor as well, and I'm sure your knowledge of lean now is that if they don't make the mark, or if they do make the mark, is that, guys, I'm not the only one responsible. You got to help me.
Sure.
And leadership is asking for the help from everybody. That I can help break down some barriers, but at the end of the day, I need you guys to help me and give me some input and tell me if you see a cliff coming. Pull the end on, call timeout, do whatever it is, and come and tell me, and let's get together as a team and figure out what that cliff is and avoid that.
Right.
So how do you do that? How do you do that on a daily basis? Because it's hard to get across to everybody, well, geez, we didn't get that part. It's easy to cast blame and say, well, we didn't get the part. And you're thinking down the road, well, that's great, but how do we stop that from happening? And what could we have done to get that part? Because that's where you want the thinking to happen. So what do you do to help the guys and gals on the floor figure that one out?
Well, we we do see a lot of that where unfortunately some things, parts issues may creep up on us. So we try to implement. We have things that are called bills of materials. We try to do some thinking up front.
Yep.
To go through some forecasting and through history, we get with our employees. We say, hey, historically, what have we used in this piece of equipment?
Right.
And we ensure that component's on our bill of materials, so that prior to that particular asset arriving to the shop floor, that our requisitioners are already going out and purchasing that particular material to have it on hand.
Yep. And go ahead.
I'm sorry. One of the things that Jeff's organization did was to adopt a concept of tier meetings. We all tend to look at the production employees as to why we succeeded or why we failed. But oftentimes it's those of us that are in support roles that either help or hinder their success. And we're not quite as visible as those shop employees are. So they adopted this concept of tier meetings. We stole it from another depot, Red River Army Depot, that did great things with the concept. And now they have startup meetings in the morning where some of the support organizations, like their parts person, engineering, etc., are present on the floor to go over these issues firsthand so that they can see directly the impacts of these issues and work together as a team to fix them. And to make sure that it's not just the shop tech that's carrying the ball, and a greater recognition that there's a whole support organization behind you, that if we're doing our jobs right, it should help them succeed more often than not.
Yeah, I heard Jim Womack speak at AME down in Dallas. I don't know if either one of you were there. And Jim Womack, as he gets older, you get wiser. So he has his great Gemba book, and I'll give you his Gemba walk book. But the impetus of his speech there was very calm and very quiet, saying that any shop floor or any organization where the work is done, where the majority of the work is done, is a direct reflection of management in the back office. So if you have chaos on the shop floor,
Amen.
You're generally going to have chaos in the back office. Yep. And we go through it. We go through the times that there's chaos here, and you try and get that organized chaos in the office. We go through time there, and you try and look at that correlation and say, what can we do together to avoid this chaos and keep it on some sustainable nature?
Yeah, it's got to be a multifunctional team approach.
Oh, God, yes.
Or you're doomed, and you know that better than anybody.
Yeah. And the ERP, we were talking about ERP as well, that, great realization now is that, a lot of the real planning, computers are great for keeping numbers, keeping things, and storing repositories of data. But as far as planning and the complexity that goes on, they're not going to do it for you.
Yeah, there's certain benefits that we get from our ERP system capabilities we never had before. But with that comes a realization that we also need to have practices at the worker level that translate that complexity into straightforward, as simple as possible, cues and signals to make their jobs easier and more likely to succeed. And that's at the end of the day, that's the biggest challenge.
Yep. And Jeff, you told me at lunch that you saw Gwen Galsworth, the visual lady. I call her the Aretha Franklin of lean because she's been around forever. She doesn't look it, but she's been around forever. But how cool is that? Because even on your palletization, you took something from her playbook where you do photos.
Right.
You do a photo. And I'm sure that you had to talk to the people in the supply chain of that. Guys, we're going to include a photo. Don't throw it in the garbage. This is kind of your legend. And if you really use this, we'll save you a lot of time. Right. Did you have a conversation like that with them? Because they're probably saying, what's the photo for?
Right. We brought the experts in. We had the photo. We also identified the exact work processes that each particular shop would go through. And they were present, so everybody was involved with that. So that was a team effort.
Right. And I can envision at Tobyhanna, the depot, that you have lanes of these pallets for where they're going, which value streams. Would I see that if I walked into it, that I'd be able to see something like that happening?
You'd see fewer than you would have before because that team down there has reduced the whip.
Okay.
But yeah,
So
you
they
would
have
see,
higher velocity. They're turning
right.
quickly. They're not waiting for big
That's
batches.
right. But
Okay.
you certainly would see
Yeah.
paths clearly defined as
Yeah.
to everything in this path is headed for these particular processes, and other cues as to the prioritization necessary for them. I think a big part of what we're touching on here too is the mutual respect that Jeff and his team, as well as it's called the Industrial Operations Facility for us, that back shop,
Right.
brought to it. Instead of trying to point fingers and suggest that you're not doing your job, oh, well, you're not doing yours, they put all that aside, and Jeff's boss said, we're going to do whatever we need to do to ensure the success of those organizations that are helping us. And if things like this, like a photograph in the pallet, helps, then we're all for it, and that's what we're going to do. And it made a tremendous difference, and it's, as Jeff said, it's something we're going to adopt across the depot, and I think it's going to make a lot of gains for us in an area that's been a thorn in our side for quite some time.
Was it Red River Depot that you stole something from?
Oh, we've stolen a lot from Red River Army
Maybe you have a
Depot
give back now
down
for
in
those guys.
Texarkana. You say that's funny you say that because I think some of their folks were up to our depot recently on another subject, and I did hear, I'm not making this up, I heard that they wanted to take some of that information back, but
And that's the
we've got
beauty
a
of
good-
the lean environment is
we've
that
got a great relationship
it's
with
a
them.
great honor for people to say, geez, I can use that.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
to give back
Yeah.
is critical. And this is the
absolutely.
respect. This is the leadership thing. And leaders shouldn't be ashamed to see clever ideas and say, you know what, I learned this from somebody else. How can we use it?
Absolutely.
You don't need to be the guy that's the omnipotent know-it-all.
Yeah.
You just need to know where to find stuff and say, guys, what do you think of this? Can we use it? Can it help us?
They've been huge supporters of us and helped us with shared their best practices very, very openly. And, part of our success is based on that kind of open sharing of ideas and benchmarking.
So you guys are going to go, you told me you're going to go for a Shingo Enterprise. Or was it an enterprise?
Yes, that's our long-term goal, to compete at the total enterprise, all 5,000 employees and over 1,000 different product lines. In the short term, however, we're going to be competing, one of our organizations is called Secure Communications, secret coding and encoding equipment for communication systems in the Army. They're pretty much a standalone organization because they have such a high security mission.
Right.
And they're going to be competing for a Shingo at the enterprise level, albeit not a total enterprise for the depot. We're submitting that package in the next few weeks. And
Fantastic.
I'm really proud of them, and they learned a lot from Jeff's organization.
Fantastic. And this is the beauty about pulling the team along and showing them that they can become teachers. Most of the people at the depot probably haven't had the opportunities to teach and share. And you guys have a lot of visitors because you have, the accolades of the Shingo prizes you've won. And now they get to teach others and share best practices. How does everybody like doing that?
So far, we've just recently received the silver medallion.
Mm-hmm.
So but our guys are always
And prior to their competition, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, your folks toured other areas
Yes.
that had previously won Shingo medallions and,
Right.
and good cross-fertilization. Nothing like employees seeing it for themselves.
And that's a great thing because you don't have to get in a bus and go a long way.
Right.
And it's just great for camaraderie. And I'm sure that you've seen people want to flex a little bit and learn a little bit more about other areas instead of being monochromatic, wanting to stay in one spot. Has that been an outcome of doing all this?
Oh, absolutely. And there's nothing like employees seeing a best practice or an organization that's made improvements for themselves. It's so much more effective than a manager like me or Jeff talking about it. They told us that the thing that converted her from a blocker to an adopter was seeing for herself with her own eyes the improvements that resulted. That's what we're getting from this cross-fertilization that we described.
Beautiful. So now how do people do you let people come in and tour? Are you top secret or not top secret? And some of our listeners, if they wanted to talk to you guys or find out more, how would they do that?
There are some security restrictions, but they're easily addressed, so
Okay.
it's not like touring a top secret facility. We welcome visitors. We like to share the lessons learned, all the things we know that don't work,
Yep.
as well as the things that we know that do. And we have a hotline called Ask Toby
Okay.
that people can call. And if they want to...
ASKTOBY. TOBY, and we'll post that on Facebook.
And,
Okay.
I can give you my email address as well. We'd
Yep.
be glad to host people who are interested in the continuous process improvement journey, just like we are.
Beautiful. Jeff, any final words to anybody going into the holiday season here in the new year? What's your outlook on the new year?
A lot more improvements to come. We're going to keep driving to reduce our repair cycle times and our costs. And I just want to say thanks for having us on.
Yeah, no problem.
Nation. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank our team, the entire team at Tobyhanna, for all the support during the our recent site visit and our silver shingle medallion. So
Well, hopefully
really
they heard Dr. Robert Reed and Dr. Allen on here. I mean, you guys make a big difference to a lot of lives and, really to the 360 million people in the U.S. and the outposts that we have around here. You guys do a heck of a job of supporting those initiatives. So I want to thank you guys, and the Lean Nation thank you as well.
Thank you, Carl.
So in the new year, we look for big things, and we'll do some posts on Facebook.
Thank you. Very
Thanks.
glad to be here.
And that's it for the Lean Nation today. We'll post all those different items on Facebook, and please share this with your friends during the holiday season. And that's it.